with stories and analysis from a vegan perspective. This is The Vegan Option.
We're starting at the beginning, when people first try the vegan option. We follow a gay couple and a young mother, and the volunteers who support them to go vegan for a month.
Why do people go vegan? What makes them stay vegan when they make the commitment? And what does that mean? London vegan campaigns have shared their data on over 100 participants over the last 3 years, and I'll be applying my scientific expertise as a psychologist to answer those questions.
I'm Ian MacDonald.
And I'm Diana Santos-Fleischman.
And this is The Vegan Option. In March 2011, a score of volunteers spent many hours and thousands of pounds to support nearly 70 people to try to go vegan for a month. I talked to pledgers and volunteers.
I'm Cliff, this is Bryan. We've been in relationship for 34 years. Is it? About 34 years. And never taken any great interest in what we eat, apart from making sure it was a healthy diet, but never any great interest in being vegetarian until relatively recently. So I haven't eaten red meat for about 3 years, I haven't eaten chicken for about a year, and I haven't eaten fish for the last few months, so I'm embarking upon a vegan lifestyle and enjoying the challenges very much.
But this is actually an international thing. It happens in the States as well as in the UK. Gary Francione interviewed Layla Fussfeld of the Peace Advocacy Network, who runs it in Philadelphia. And then also there's another vegan pledge that's run in Baltimore by Open the Cages Alliance.
And the subjects of the Queen also run one on the other side of the world, Animal Liberation in Victoria in Australia, run the 30-day Easy Vegan Challenge. But the one I went to is one of the original ones.
Challenge, huh?
The Vegan Easy Challenge.
No, I just think it's funny to say something as easy and a challenge. I find that a bit funny.
Okay, the London Vegan Campaigns Pledge is one of the originals and one of the biggest. They hold a big meeting at the start and the end of the month. They've got a medic, they've got a dietitian, and mentors to support pledges in between. So let's go to our second family, Ananthi and her daughters, whom you can hear playing and occasionally breathing very, very close to the microphone.
Ananthi Ananthi, I'm a teacher at a secondary school in Orpington.
South London.
South London, yes. I've been having problems, digestive system problems, for a little while now, for about 6 months to a year, and I've tried a lot of other things. I'm already vegetarian, so the next thing was, right, let me start cutting things out. And it made sense to cut out dairy. And then I saw this in a magazine. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try that. And because you've got the help and the support here, it was the perfect opportunity to give it a go.
In terms of the ethical arguments, what do you think of those?
I've taken on board, the issues and the problems. And me personally, I think for me personally, it's slightly different from what I would insist on what other people did. At the moment, and I think always, I'm very much for if you believe in it, then you do it. But so if somebody said to me, all I do is eat meat, I'm like, okay, fine, but then that's up to you and your conscience to live with that. For me, that doesn't sit very well, basically. So, I've never eaten meat, and the children are all brought up vegetarian anyway, and pretty much everybody who I've been with, ex-boyfriends and partners, husbands, they've all become vegetarian because they can see that actually they don't need to eat lots of meat. They can live on a vegetarian diet.
So we've got two different approaches to veganism that we heard in these clips here. So there's Bryan and Cliff, who are interested in the ethics, and Ananthi, who is interested in mostly health. So I have some data that the Vegan Pledge were kind enough to give to us. Each year, The Vegan Pledge brings people in and they assign them a mentor, and they also give them questionnaires at the beginning of the pledge, asking them about reasons that they might be interested in going vegan. And then at the end of the pledge, at the end of the 30 days, if they come to that meeting, they give them another questionnaire, and then they ask them about how the pledge went, what challenges they had, etc. And we have data from 2009, 2010, and 2011. And something worth mentioning is that the Vegan Pledge has increased every year. So around 30 people in 2008, 60 in 2009, 90 in 2010. And this year they had a waiting list because there were over 100 people wanting to do the Vegan Pledge.
So what are the challenges of going vegan? I asked our pledgers what they were expecting.
Balancing the nutritional side of things, getting that right. Being able to shop, that's a big challenge. You get in
the situation where, you know, maybe at work a plate of biscuits appear and I won't be able to have one because they won't be vegan. So it's just making sure that I'm always prepared and I've got something available.
Oh, butter. Butter is a huge challenge. Because we have butter, I think, in everything. And when we cook or steam vegetables, we often put a bit of butter on the top and, you know, things like that. I don't tend to use a lot of ghee unless it's just the garnishing at the end. So things like that I've started leaving out anyway. So over the past 2-3 weeks, I've started leaving bits out just to see if anybody notices, really.
If they notice.
No. Which is why I think it shouldn't be that difficult with a lot of dishes that I already make. But as I said, there's the odd thing where I need to find another alternative because they love having pancakes. So I've made it without eggs, and now it's finding a suitable soya milk type alternative for the milk that they will be happy with.
We asked people to talk a little bit about their experiences when they first went vegan and what challenges they faced on our blog at theveganoption.org. So I'm going to select a couple of excerpts. One is from Eric Clark, who was one of the first vegans I actually met in Texas when I first went vegan. So Eric says, I wasn't really vegan for the first month I was vegan. It took me a while to learn what animal ingredients to look for on the labels of things or to ask about in restaurants. I think it took me a few months to really get over the learning curve. And he also says that during the first few months when he was trying to be vegan, he accidentally ate a couple things that weren't. And he said he just didn't get too upset. He just figured that this was all going to be a learning process, which I totally agree with. Dada Monkey from the UK says, I went vegan over 30 years ago. Over a period of a year, I went from veggie to vegan, so there wasn't a real singular time. It was gradual. And what Dada Monkey says is that there were virtually no supermarket foods, and the internet was in its infancy, so I had to learn to cook. Luckily, I studied biology and learned all about what nutrients I needed and how to get them. Maybe that's why I've lasted so long. I faced doctors, teachers, etc. telling me it wasn't safe. Well, they were certainly wrong. So you see the difference in what it was like for vegans who have gone vegan recently and vegans who went vegan a long time ago, like Ian, who was actually fighting dinosaurs for plant foods.
In the words of Bob Torres, things aren't what they used to be.
I don't remember him saying that.
Things ain't what they
He
used
always does the old-timey voice. He goes, oh, back when I was vegan.
Yes.
So who's harder to fight for plant vegetation? Is it a Triceratops or the Brontosaurus?
I think it was the Triceratops. I mean...
Spiky tail.
That's the Ankylosaurus. If only I had this kind of help.
A health check with a doctor and a dietitian. That's before and after the vegan month. They're introduced to a vegan buddy, that's an experienced vegan who supports them throughout the whole month. They've got cookery demonstrations and workshops, different talks. Like we've got lots of vegan experts like dietitian Sandra Hood and Alex Bork from Veggie Guys, all talking about different aspects of veganism. And a really important part as well is the food. We put on a really good lunchtime buffet for people to try, and we provide all the recipes. We also give people an information pack when they join and a goodie bag at the end of the month with lots of vegan products that are donated by companies. We do have a lot of food donated as well by different vegan companies, and we keep in touch with them during the month with emails and different web links for support. So I think that's most of it.
Cookery lessons.
Absolutely, there was a cookery workshop.
Maybe you should go attend some of the Vegan Pledge meetings. I would certainly eat a lot better.
Well, I did have a word with a woman who ran the cookery workshop.
Yeah?
Yes.
My name's Lizzie and I'm showing people how to make some quick and easy dinners. On your sheet you've got 4 recipes. We are going to make the chilli now, followed by the spicy chickpea. We've got some lovely pots of sausage and bean hot pot over there, so you can have a look at those afterwards. Ready to sample at lunchtime.
I knew you were going to say that, so I made absolutely sure that I got a bit of training, and I made sure that when it came to making sure somebody grated something, I did so. And I had a chance to talk to Lizzie at the end about what she was teaching the pledgers.
People are wanting quick and simple ideas when they get home from work. You know, they don't want to be actually spending long time in the kitchen.
This is sold as a workshop. More of a demo?
A little bit more of a demo. Obviously, when people were planning, they were thinking it could be a little bit more hands-on. But obviously, in half an hour, to get 20 people cooking is quite difficult. So we decided, to just get people involved in the chopping and things like that instead.
That was basically me grating a carrot.
Yeah.
So I got all the training after 20 years of being vegan and not the...
That's because you wanted to do the carrot.
Grating carrots? Never do anything that complicated in the kitchen here.
You cheeky. Anyway, I'm excellent and fantastic cook. But, so what did our pledgers get out of all this help?
Well, number one, I mean, there's been such beautiful food available, all of which was absolutely gorgeous. There was nothing that I didn't like. So that will help enormously. It's quite clear I'm not going to be at any great hardship from the point of view of food quality. It's also helped seeing that film again. I've seen it before in private.
Making the connection.
Yeah. And just watching it again in a group.
Just because the food actually tastes. I've got to admit, it's going to sound awful, but the food tastes really nice, and she's had a good try of quite a few bits and pieces, which was really my intention for bringing her as well, was so that she could try different foods, and I could get an idea of what she likes and what she doesn't like, and then I can buy it at home.
Oh, that sounds lovely, especially given that Ian is withholding food from me until this podcast is finished.
And let's torture you further by listening to what people thought of the food on the day.
It was delicious, and in particular the chilli was really amazing. In fact, I think the grated carrots made it work.
This dish tastes absolutely wonderful. I think what makes it work best is actually the grated carrots. Fantastic.
There's a secret ingredient in this, and I think it could be the grated carrot that really sets this apart from other chilies I've had. So I think in the future I will grate carrot into all my chilies to emulate this wonderful, wonderful dish.
Grated carrot. Apparently the grated carrot made it work.
Absolutely. Do you now accept my cooking brilliance?
Especially if you were grating carrots for rabbits, I think that they would be very appreciative. You fixing the audience.
Me fixing the audience? I never fix the audience. Although, okay, contributors perhaps, but never fixing the audience. Those were our dear friends Josh and Cameron saying everything I told them, for which I'm very, very grateful. During the month, pledgers get support from the Vegan Buddy, and I asked
Vegan Booty?
Yes, a Vegan Buddy. A Vegan Buddy.
For those of you listening at home who do not understand Ian's strange northern accent, a vegan buddy is actually a vegan buddy, the mentor that helps them throughout the month.
One of the questions that came up most frequently was the subject of eating out at restaurants, and the idea that it was a lot harder to eat at restaurants as a vegan than it was as either an omnivore or a vegetarian. And the suggestion was that it was a lot harder to eat out as a vegan than it was as an omnivore or a vegetarian. But having looked at it as a group, we realised that a lot of the time it's actually not harder, it's just maybe not quite as straightforward. That sometimes if you just phone ahead to the restaurant, that a lot of places either do have a vegan option or something that can be readily made to be vegan. And a lot of chain restaurants such as Wagamama, Pizza Express, Giraffe and even Nando's can cater to vegans.
So who we just heard there, that's Rob Masters, who composed and performed our theme tune, giving some advice on what to do in restaurant situations.
The buddies told me that their mentorees often wanted more social than practical help. reassurance as much as recipes?
One of them was, I have leather clothes, I have leather shoes. Do I need to sort of throw them away to be considered vegan? And what I said to them is what I think most vegans would say is, veganism is a journey, and it's an ethical journey that relates to yourself. So no one can really answer that question for you. If you're comfortable wearing those shoes until they wear out and then you replace them with them, then that's fine. It's better. They're going to go to waste anyway.
So the questions you got were, well, I have to compromise in this way, or is this still veganism?
That's true, and it was also about other people questioning him and so on, and it wasn't so much that they were asking me for help there, but they were just saying...
Asking you for validation.
Validation, or they were going to friends' places for dinners, and the friends, they didn't want to impose on people.
One of the most frequent questions that my pledges asked me was how to deal with friends and family, and telling them that they'd gone vegan, and how to deal with sort of family events or friends throwing dinner parties, that sort of thing. Noble aspirations and so on, but you do have to say, well, it's imposing on the animals, it's imposing on the environment to do it anything else. And most people, if they're real friends of yours, they'll go out of their way. They know you're doing this for an ethical reason or a health reason or whatever you're doing it in particular, and a good friend will support you in that.
One of the people who was taking the pledge was concerned that when she went to visit her grandparents back in Portugal, that they might be unable to provide food for her, and also that they wouldn't understand.
And I told them a bit about my personal experiences, how my family dealt with it, and some tips on how to break. Well, some dealt better than others. I told some of them well in advance of the visit, but I forgot to mention it to my grandmother. Showed up at her house and said, I'm vegan now, and she started panicking and saying, what can I make you? So she made me rice and parsley for dinner, and that's how I learned to always tell people well in advance of any sort of dinner party or visiting. One girl was from Italy, and she said she didn't think her Italian family would understand veganism. And she thought they'd take it as sort of a personal rejection of their food culture. So I just said, my family's part Italian, and I tried to emphasize to them that it was the food that I was rejecting and not them as people. And so I made sort of veganized versions of their favorite dishes and fed it to them, and they couldn't really tell the difference. And they were like, oh, this is really nice, now I want to try more vegan food. So it was a really positive experience for my family. Because most of my pledges said for them it was quite easy going vegan. They had a pretty easy time of finding vegan food in London, but they were more worried about the social implications with their family and friends.
So you can hear how important buddies are in terms of helping the pledgees persevere through both social and practical situations. But looking at the data, how important were buddies? Well, we found that buddy support was predictive of whether or not people decided to stay vegan after the month-long pledge, with more supportive buddies leading to more pledgees deciding to stay vegan after a month. And one person in particular saying that they gave up after 3 weeks because they didn't feel like they had enough support.
You've got relatives in continental Europe that aren't necessarily vegan friendly. I mean, do you have an issue there, or?
Yeah, I think I do. I don't think that my Portuguese relatives ever really did understand why I was going vegan. And there's a certain amount of dualism in my family. So one day they'll say they understand completely and then they admire me. And the next day they'll say, well, you're really missing out on all this delicious food that we made. And my mother specifically lamenting that my Portuguese grandmother's recipes will not be passed down in the family because I eat all kinds of weird vegan food.
It's a month later, and how do you think they'll do?
I think that Ananthi was talking a lot about how she was going to miss various things, so I'm not sure if she's going to stick with it. Whereas Cliff and Bryan seemed to have more resolve and seemed to be a more gradual process, so maybe they'll do better. But in the 2011 data, we actually found that vegetarians were the most likely to resolve to stay vegan after the pledge, and pescatarians as well, but that omnivores only decided to stay vegan after the pledge at around 30%.
Let's hear from Ananthi.
Fine, not too difficult at all. Initial glitch of getting a cheese alternative, which I don't think I've actually found a good cheese alternative. Girls fish. But other than that, no real problems.
I noticed that your daughter wasn't keen on the pizza.
No, I'm not either. I think the vegan cheese has been a little less than desirable. I mean, I haven't tried one yet, which is nice.
And what did your other half think of the pledge?
Fine. You know, it's very much like, well, if that's what you want to try and do, then go ahead.
And are you a vegan now?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to stay as vegan as possible. I've ticked that on one of these questionnaires, partly because I know that when I go to my mum's or when I go to friends and family, I know that they're going to say vegan, and I go, okay, fine, I'm going to make something vegan, and I know at some point there's going to be some sort of where they've stirred one dish and then used the same spoon to stir something else, and I know there's going to be transfer, so there's going to be some sort of contamination with whatever else they've cooked. So I think it's vegan as much as possible, I think is probably what it is. So I won't be going back.
Okay, so vegan cheese, very important to Ananthi. What about that in the stats?
Well, we asked, after 1 month, people were asked about what they found most challenging in the 2009 and 2010 pledges, and this is 52 people who did the follow-up survey. So in order, what people found most challenging, these are what people spontaneously reported, are 37% said eating out and convenience was difficult. Missing dairy was at 19%. So that is quite a high percentage. Missing other foods, on the other hand, was only about 2% of the survey actually mentioned that they miss any other foods, like meat. Also, only around 2% was feeling any kind of nutritional problems, lack of energy, anything like that. And then frustration with label checking, trace ingredients, and difficulty with willpower tied as things people mentioned. About 15% of people mentioned those. Finding friends, relatives, and acquaintances unsupportive was at around 10%.
Before we go to Cliff and Bryan, I'll just note that we have taped a taste test of different kinds of vegan cheese, and we hope to bring that to you in a future episode. Let's see how Cliff and Bryan did.
During the month since the first meeting of the vegan challenge, it's been mainly a vegan diet, but sometimes it just hasn't been possible.
So I'm not finding it's not a challenge. It's if you want to, it seems to be, it's there, easy enough.
So what was the most difficult bit in the month for each of you?
The most difficult part for me was eating away from home. So, for example, the seminar that I mentioned, that happened on 2 occasions. What I was offered was very poor and insubstantial.
So what was it?
On the first one, it was a plate with just some lettuce leaves and some pepper and a couple of slices of tomato and a carton of oil to pour over it. So no carbohydrate, no protein, no substance. I was left feeling hungry.
So what did you do in those circumstances?
Well, on both of them, I ate some of the non-vegan food because, I'm being pragmatic.
How was your month?
I did the same, resorted to the either vegetarian or the fish ocean option, as there were nothing else available to eat. Just
at the funeral.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So can't go hungry.
Yes, and I can appreciate a buffet at a funeral is a.
Yeah. Had to eat the fish because I don't want to eat cheese.
Why fish rather than cheese? In the ethical scheme.
Sort of ocean-orientated fish or out of the sea I can cope with, but not from an animal byproduct, if I can help it.
Because
unless it's necessary.
Because they're wild until they're caught.
Yeah, it's the cruelty involved and all that. The whole point of being a vegan is to avoid all that cruelty.
And what I've loved doing at home is beginning to prepare food and doing food. Last night I baked a couple of cakes, which I haven't baked cakes for years, so it's a
Did you bring them?
No. So it's opening all sorts of new possibilities up. It's like not just about eating; it goes into every aspect of life, and I'm enjoying it. I'm finding it very interesting.
So, looking ahead of the future, do you think you're going to keep being vegan? Do you think you're going to be?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll become 100%. Now that I've had this opportunity to prepare for it, I'm much better prepared, and I expect to be 100% vegan.
Creeping over to 100%.
What's interesting is that Ananthi was, in practice, stricter about cross-contamination, but Cliff and Bryan were more likely to self-identify as vegan despite their transgressions and thought that moved them closer. Now, Diane and I mirror this in our own approaches to veganism. Well, no? You're shaking your head?
Well, I don't think that I would just go ahead and eat cheese or fish if I was hungry. I think that's why it's important to always have a bag with a couple bars. You know, I pretty much always have backup food in cases like that. And I'm a very strict economic vegan. I would say that even if I was at a buffet, I wouldn't want to cause demand for any animal products. So insofar as cross-contamination is concerned, I really don't care about cross-contamination, unlike Ian.
Yeah, but there have been... I mean, there have been a few times in the past year where, including travelling with your relatives in continental Europe who are less sympathetic, where you've lapsed into, I call it freeganism, where you are not adding to the demand for animal products, but you say, I'm hungry, there's nothing else to eat, that thing will go into the bin if I don't eat it, so I'm not changing the demand at all, therefore I'll eat it. Which is why an early idea for the name for this podcast was Good Vegan, Bad Vegan.
Well, I mean, I can think about a couple times when I've done that. One time when I visited my grandmother in Germany, and she can't shop for me, and she doesn't know what I eat. There's no point in not eating something that has trace ingredients unless it bothers you personally or disgusts you personally, because it actually doesn't cause any demand, and in terms of practice, makes no difference to animals.
There are probably quite a few listeners going, oh, Diana isn't vegan, and not that I wish to take his name in vain, but I would guess that typically, say, Professor Francione wouldn't call you a vegan. But I think this is a show about... I think it's part of the strength of the show that I've got a straightforward cross-contamination is bad, avoid processing agents, and Diana challenges that.
And we're going to definitely talk more about that in future episodes, because it's not really as straightforward as we could describe in 1 minute of audio.
I'm a good vegan, you're a bad vegan. It's very straightforward.
Very, very simple. Yes, but I have a better track record of nurturing people. I wouldn't say converting people to become vegan, because I think when people go out with me, they don't think, gosh, it seems really, really difficult, and there are all these strange diglycerides and names on the ends of things that I have to avoid. What people found challenging was quite interesting. None of these was really predictive of whether or not someone decided to stay vegan, except for finding relatives and friends unsupportive.
Well, so really tough if you had unsupportive friends?
No, actually, surprisingly, finding your friends, relatives, and acquaintances unsupportive was correlated with staying vegan.
And for some of the data, we have a 1-year follow-up.
Yes, for about 24 participants who took part in 2009, there is a year follow-up, and the majority of them stayed vegan, although there is going to be a selection bias there.
6 months later, Ananthi isn't vegan. She's reduced her dairy consumption, and Cliff is. He says it's like coming home.
And last week we ran into someone you'd interviewed but not included in the show in a vegan restaurant. She's still vegan. You should put her back in.
So, thank you, Leslie. So you're a vegetarian at the moment and thinking of being vegan, and this is the pledge?
I've been a vegetarian for 27 years, and in all that time I've always felt that I would prefer to be vegan, that it's more compatible with my views on animal welfare and so on. So I've always in the back of my mind felt like a bit of a hypocrite, and I think the time just felt right now. When I received the email regarding the pledge, I thought, I'm going to go for it. So here I am.
So at the start of the programme, you promised to say what makes people more likely to go vegan. Chrissy, who we heard earlier, gave you the data from the pledge questionnaires for the last few years. What helps most?
So interestingly, there's no difference in 2009-2010, but vegetarians and pescatarians were more likely to stay vegan in 2011, and in that aspect there was a better designed questionnaire. Buddies help, that's not a surprise. People with more supportive mentor buddies in the pledge were more likely to decide to stay vegan and certainly make it through the pledge. Very interestingly, and I'm going to definitely devote a whole blog to this, those who had less supportive friends and family were more likely to stay vegan. So those who said that their friends and family were more hostile. And I've got a lot of interesting ideas about why this might be, but you're going to have to read the blog to see that.
So, vegans thrive in adversity. Well, if your house is a hostile place full of devious backstabbers and no vegan food, you'll want to hear our next show. I'm off to meet 3 vegans who sit in one of the most hostile houses of them all, the House of Commons. Britain's 2010 general election elected 3 vegan MPs to Parliament.
What does the vegan option mean in politics? What is it like to represent an electorate that largely doesn't share your views on animals? We're collecting suggestions for questions that Ewan will ask them. Comment at theveganoption.org.
Or tweet with the hashtag VeganMPs. But do so soon, before Monday, October the 17th. The next show will be out on World Vegan Day, November the 1st.
Digital media artist Rob Masters, also known as Idiotech, wrote and performed our theme, which you're about to hear full length. The producer is Ian McDonald. I'm Diana Fleischman, who supplied the analysis today and made the tea.
Thank you for listening.
More at theveganoption.org.
The Vegan Option is copyright Ian McDonald and Diana Fleischman.